My own country would not let me treat white American soldiers. So they sent me to treat the enemy instead. The enemy fell in love with me. I fell in love with him, and we spent the rest of our lives looking for a place that would accept us both. My name is Elinor Powell. I am a second lieutenant in the United States Army Nurse Corps. I was born and raised in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, in a family that believed in service and education, and the idea that if you worked hard enough and were good enough at what you did, the world would eventually have to make room for you. I was wrong about that last part. Or rather, the world made room, just not the room I had earned. I want to tell you about Camp Florence, Arizona. About the summer of 1944, about a German prisoner of war who worked in a mess hall and said 4 words to me that I have never forgotten, and about everything that happened after. I need to tell you what it meant to be a black nurse in the United States Army in 1944, because the story does not make sense without it. When the war began, thousands of black women tried to enlist in the Army Nurse Corps. Most were rejected. The Army had a quota. It did not want too many black nurses, and the ones it did accept were assigned carefully, kept separate, given the assignments that white nurses did not want or were considered too good for. I was accepted. I was proud of that. I had trained hard and I was good at my work, and I genuinely believed that my country needed me, and that my country knew it needed me. What my country actually believed was more complicated than that. When I arrived at my posting, I discovered what black nurses in the Army Nurse Corps had largely been assigned to do. We were not treating wounded American soldiers. We were not in the field hospitals or the military wards, where the men who had been shot and burned and broken in the service of our country were being put back together. We were treating German prisoners of war. The Army's reasoning was not complicated. They had decided there was too much fraternization between white nurses and German prisoners. The solution to the Army's way of thinking was simple: replace the white nurses with black nurses, a black woman and a white German man. The Army was certain nothing would happen. The Army was wrong about that too. Camp Florence was in the Arizona desert, flat and dry and brutally hot in summer. The kind of heat that sits on you like a physical weight from the moment you step outside. Between 1942 and 1946, it held thousands of German prisoners of war, part of the more than 370,000 German prisoners housed across the United States during the war years. I arrived in 1944. I was 23 years old. I want to be honest about how I felt when I understood my assignment. I was angry. I had volunteered to serve my country, to care for American soldiers, men who were fighting and dying for the same flag I had grown up believing in. Instead, I had been sent to care for the men who were trying to kill them. The men who represented everything we were fighting against: the racism, the fascism, the belief that some human beings are worth less than others. The irony of that was not lost on me. I was fighting a war against racism. My own country was practicing it on me. On the afternoon of my first week at Camp Florence, I walked into a Woolworth's lunch counter in downtown Phoenix. I was in uniform, a United States Army officer, serving her country in wartime. The waiter looked at me and told me he could not serve me. All he saw was my brown skin. I walked out of that lunch counter and I thought, I am good enough to care for the enemy. I am not good enough to be served lunch in my own country. Frederick Albert was working in the mess hall at Camp Florence when I first saw him. He had been captured in Italy in 1944, a Luftwaffe medic, born in 1925 in Oppeln, Germany. He was not a Nazi true believer. He had volunteered to serve, not out of ideology, but out of a complicated desire to impress a father who paid him very little attention, and who had fought in the First War, and seemed to measure everything by that standard. It was, as he told me much later, a bad reason to go to war. Most reasons for going to war are: he was assigned to the mess hall because he could cook. He was good at it, precise and careful in the kitchen the way Precise and careful people tend to be good at things that reward precision and care. When I walked into the mess hall that first time, I was not thinking about German prisoners of war. I was thinking about the heat and the work ahead of me, and the lunch counter in Phoenix, and the particular exhaustion of carrying anger that you cannot put down because the thing making you angry has not stopped. He noticed me before I noticed him. He came to my table, which took courage, because fraternization between prisoners and nurses was not permitted, and he knew it as well as I did. And he stood there for a moment, and then he said for words that I was not expecting. He said, "You should know my name." I looked at him. He said, "My name is Frederick Albert. I think you should know it." I told him I was not sure why I should. He said, "Because I am going to know yours." I told him my name was Elinor Powell and that he should go back to the kitchen before someone saw him standing at my table. He went back to the kitchen. I thought about those 4 words for the rest of the day. What followed was not simple. Nothing about it was simple. We were on opposite sides of a war. He was a prisoner. I was an officer. The regulations were clear. Fraternization was forbidden, and for me the consequences were worse than for him. He could be disciplined. I could lose everything I had worked for, my commission, my career, my standing, for the crime of talking to a German prisoner of war in a mess hall in Arizona. My fellow nurses knew what was happening before I fully admitted it to myself. They covered for me. They kept watch. They made space in the margins of a regulated life for something that was not supposed to exist. Frederick and I talked, in those margins, in the moments that could be explained away, in the spaces between what was permitted and what was not. We talked about Germany, and about Boston, and about the war, and about what we each wanted when it was over. We talked about his father and about my family, and about the strange, particular circumstance that had put a Black American nurse and a German prisoner of war in the same mess hall in the Arizona desert, and somehow, against every available logic, made them want to keep talking. He told me once that he had grown up with the Nazi ideology around him the way you grow up with, whether it was simply there, part of the atmosphere, and you learned to move through it without necessarily believing it. He said meeting me had made him understand, for the first time, how completely he had not believed it. That everything the regime had told him about race and hierarchy, and who was worth more than whom, had been contradicted by a woman in a United States Army uniform, who had more intelligence and dignity. He said, "It is the truth. I cannot make it more convenient than it is." I believed him. Not because I was naive, because I had spent enough time watching people say things they did not mean to recognize. In him, someone saying something he did. The war ended in 1945. Frederick was deported back to Germany in 1946. That was the procedure. Prisoners of war were repatriated when the war concluded, sent back to the countries they had come from, regardless of what they had built in the years of their captivity. I was pregnant when he left. Our son Stephen was born after Frederick had already gone. I held my son and I thought about a man on a ship crossing the Atlantic in the wrong direction. Not yet knowing he had a son waiting for him in Arizona, I wrote to him. I told him about Stephen. Stephen's existence, the fact of a child, of a family, was what allowed Frederick to apply to return to the United States. The immigration process was not simple and it was not fast. But it worked. Frederick came back. We were married in New York City on the 26th of June 1947. I want to tell you that the hard part was over after that. I want to tell you that we had found each other and that finding each other was enough, and that the rest was simply the ordinary business of building a life. But the hard part was not over. We tried Boston first. My city, the city I had grown up in, believing that it was more enlightened than the South. That the racism I had encountered was a Southern problem and not a Northern one. We discovered quickly that this was not true. An interracial couple, a Black woman and a German man in the years immediately after the war, was not something that Boston in the late 1940s knew how to accommodate. We tried Philadelphia. We tried Germany. We thought perhaps his country would be easier, that the post-war chaos might have loosened some of the old certainties. It had not. In Germany, I was a Black American woman, which meant I was a problem of a different kind than the one I had been in America, but a problem nonetheless. Our son Stephen was treated as something that did not fit into any available category. We came back to America. We tried Connecticut. Connecticut worked. Not perfectly. Not without difficulty. But we found work, and we found neighbors who were willing, if not always enthusiastic, to accept us. We put down roots in the way that people put down roots when they have been looking for ground long enough, carefully, deliberately, with the understanding that you do not take it for granted. We stayed. I am telling you this story now because I think it is time it was told. For many years I did not talk about Camp Florence. Not because I was ashamed of it. I was never ashamed of it, but because the telling required explaining so many other things. The Army's racism. The lunch counter in Phoenix. The irony of being sent to care for the enemy by a country that would not let me eat lunch. The years of looking for a place that would have us. It was a lot to explain. And for a long time, I was tired. But I am not tired anymore. What I want you to understand, what I most want you to take from this, is not the love story, though the love story is real. What I want you to understand is what Frederick and I represented to each other in that mess hall in Arizona in 1944. He was supposed to embody everything I was fighting against. I was supposed to be invisible to him. One more non-white person in a world that his country had spent years telling him did not matter. Instead, he walked across a mess hall and said, "You should know my name." And I was supposed to see him as the enemy. The thing we were all sacrificing for. The ideology we had crossed oceans to defeat. Instead, I saw a young man who was precise and careful in a kitchen, and who said true things simply, and who looked at me like I was worth looking at. America had sent me to care for the enemy, because it did not think I was good enough for anything else. The enemy saw me more clearly than my own country did. I have thought about that for the rest of my life.